All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're tracing an absolutely wild 16-year journey. We are going from zero, and I mean literally zero, to a $500 million holding company. And to make this really hit home, we're going to do this by putting you directly in the shoes of the buyer. We're going step by step, level by level, through the exact playbook of how a massive financial empire gets built entirely from scratch. To really grasp how crazy this is, we've got to anchor this story right at the starting line. Picture this. You're 31 years old, you're staring cross-eyed at a massive spreadsheet of 900 different businesses, and you have exactly $90,000 in your savings account. That's it. That is your entire liquid net worth. So for the very first time in your life, you've scraped together 90 grand. And your master plan? To buy up $500 million worth of other people's life's work. I mean, just think about that gap for a second. The distance between your current bank account and your ultimate ambition is just staggering. It honestly sounds impossible, right? But the mechanics of how you actually bridge that gap, it's fascinating. Now, what's actually making this entire playbook possible is a massive, incredibly urgent macroeconomic trend. Every single day, 10,000 baby boomer business owners are turning 65. We are talking about a historic, generational transfer of wealth happening right under our noses in boring, everyday businesses. And the crazy part? There are almost zero buyers lined up to take them over. Which brings us to level one, the searcher. You are out there hunting for a $3.5 million business, armed with only your 90K. You're looking for a company that throws off about $1 million a year in cash. But to actually find it, you are grinding. You're sifting through picked-over broker listings, mailing letters to owners who haven't even considered selling yet, and agonizing as deals die right on the operating table. Searching for a business is literally its own full-time job, and right now it pays you absolutely nothing. And this leads us straight into a super critical metric you have to master: seller's discretionary earnings, or SDE for short. When you finally find a potential business, you've got to act like a mechanic listening to a sputtering engine. You have to aggressively audit their books to figure out the true cash value because, let's be real, that owner has probably been running his personal truck, his fishing boat, and maybe even his golden retriever's vet bills through the company for a decade. Every single dollar of those personal add-backs that you can actually defend lifts the true value of the business. You have to untangle the hard numbers from the stories the owner is telling himself. Okay. So level two, the buyer. After endless dead ends, you finally get the folder. An owner actually agrees to sell, but now you're confronting a $3.8 million price tag. You're 32, you've got 90 grand to your name, and you somehow need to buy something worth nearly $4 million. So how on earth do you do that? Well, you don't. The bank does. The way this math magically works is through the government-backed SBA 7A loan structure. Think of it like a stack. The bank is going to fund about 80% of the deal. Then, the seller himself carries a note for 10%, meaning the guy sitting across the table is literally lending you a piece of his own asking price. And you just have to come up with that final 10% in equity. But wait, it gets better. Here's the real trick. That seller's note can actually count towards your required equity if it sits on full standby. This just means he doesn't see a single cent of principal or interest for the first 2 years. And he agrees to this because, well, he wants out of the business just as badly as you want in. But then, right before you pop the champagne, the lawyer slides one final terrifying piece of paper across the desk. Because you own more than 20% of the business, you are required to sign an unlimited personal guarantee. This is as real as it gets. If this business dies, you don't just lose the company. The bank puts a lien on your house. You literally lose the place you sleep. You've just wiped out your life savings, and now your entire life is on the line. But you take a deep breath, and you sign it anyway. Welcome to level 3, the operator. You are 32 years old and suddenly $3 million in debt. Tomorrow morning, you have to walk into a building full of industry veterans who've been working there longer than you've even been an adult, and you have to somehow prove that you're in charge. You basically just took on $3 million of debt to buy yourself an incredibly stressful job. And your daily stress? It's now defined by one make-or-break metric: debt service coverage. This is the ratio of the actual cash the business throws off compared to that massive monthly loan payment you owe the bank. To keep that crucial cushion alive, you have to roll up your sleeves and do the really unglamorous, difficult work. You have to raise the prices that the previous owner was just too nice to raise. You have to fire that toxic customer who always pays 90 days late. You have to sit down, listen to the 19-year veteran general manager, and finally fix what's been broken for years. All right, let's fast forward to level 4, the acquirer. You survive. You're 36 now. The absolute sheer panic of that bank loan has dulled a bit. The business is clearing $800K a year, and honestly, you're pretty comfortable. This is where most people stop. But you realize there are 10,000 more owners aging out every single day. So you decide to leverage your first business to go buy a second, and then a third. You are shifting from a day-to-day operator to a strategic allocator. And you were able to pull this off because of a concept called multiple arbitrage. Let me tell you, this is the absolute financial cheat code of the entire economy. You're buying these small, boring companies one at a time for relatively cheap, say maybe 3 times what they earn. But just watch what happens when you start grouping them together. The math on this is just wild. Down on Main Street, a single small shop is usually valued at roughly 3 times its earnings, mostly because it relies entirely on one tired owner. But the instant you put 2 or 3 of these exact same businesses under one roof, sharing bookkeeping, sharing service trucks, sharing back office resources, the combined entity is suddenly priced like a real institutional enterprise. Those exact same earnings are now valued at 6 to 8 times. You are literally buying earnings cheap, and just by holding them together, their value magically doubles. Which brings us to level 5, the builder. At age 40, you now own 8 different businesses. You aren't just buying companies anymore, you are building the machine that buys companies. You set up a central management holding company that sits right above all the day-to-day operations. It handles all the accounting, the financing, the HR, and in return, each of your 8 businesses pays a management fee up to the parent company, constantly extracting cash upwards to fund your next big deal. And this is exactly where you deploy a pretty ruthless but incredibly useful trick. The dividend recapitalization. Once one of your businesses pays down its original loan, you refinance it, you put fresh debt back onto that business, and that newly borrowed cash is paid directly up to you as a tax-free dividend. You can pull your original $90,000 investment out many times over without ever selling a single share of the company. The risk shifts entirely back down to the business, and the cash, it comes right home to you. But eventually, you're going to hit the ultimate crossroads. Do you take the private equity exit, packaging up your 8 businesses and selling the whole platform to a massive fund for a one-time payout with a whole lot of zeros? Or do you play the long game? Do you just hold the businesses forever and let that cash quietly compound year after year after year? Well, you choose to hold. Welcome to level 6, the holding company. You are 47 now. You didn't sell those first 8 companies, and guess what? You didn't sell the next 12 either. You now oversee 20 incredibly boring businesses. We're talking commercial laundry, pest control, plumbing, none of it is flashy. But together, they are generating hundreds of millions in revenue, and your equity across this entire structure, it's worth roughly $500 million. And you might be wondering, how did you actually beat out those massive billion-dollar private equity firms that were fishing in your exact same waters? Simple. You have a structural advantage. PE funds run on a fast, ticking clock. They are forced to sell within 5 to 7 years to return money to their investors. But you can promise a seller that you won't gut the company just to flip it. You promise to keep that 70-year-old founder's name on the door because you can hold it forever. And there is a really deep emotional reality behind these deals. Take the words of the very first seller you ever bought from, looking back 16 years later. He tells you he actually turned down bigger, much better funded buyers just to sell to you. Why? Because they wanted to flip his life's work. He said, I didn't want to be flipped. I wanted my 31 years to keep existing after my name came off the lease. Winning at this level, it isn't just about the math. It's about promising to protect a legacy. And that highlights a profoundly tragic structural truth about our economy right now. Despite literally trillions of dollars in value floating out there, 4 out of 5 of these small businesses that hit the market will never, ever find a buyer. When the owner ages out, the doors just quietly close, the jobs completely vanish. You built a $500 million holding company largely because you were the one buyer willing to promise that you'd let these businesses keep living. So just tracing this 16-year timeline back, it reveals an absolutely staggering financial and emotional climb. From a terrified 31-year-old searcher with just $90K in savings, to taking on $3.8 million in debt, to scaling 8 businesses, all the way to sitting at the very top of a $500 million empire. It is a total masterclass in leverage, pure operational grit, and the incredible, undeniable power of compounding over time. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought. The next time you're out, think about that plumbing company down your street, or those local pest control trucks you pass every single day. These boring businesses are the actual engines of a massive wealth transfer happening right now. Which begs the question, who is quietly buying your town?